Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. I am Rupesh Sarve on behalf of RPG Life Sciences. I welcome to all for today's webinar on decoding Athena study and its impact on Indian renal transplant practice. We have with us Dr. Shishir Gang sir and Dr. Sundar sir. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Sundar sir and also request him to, after my introductions, please introduce to our today's speaker, Dr. Shishir sir. Dr. Sundar sir is a consultant nephrologist, head International Transplant Services, Manipal Hospital, Bangalore. He has also ex-chairman Indian Society of Nephrology, having the rich experience in transplant over 3,000 transplantation done by sir. He has also adjunct professors of the nephrology, Manipal University, founder member Indian Society of Organ Transplant. Then he has also the founder member Nephrology Associations of Karnataka. Published articles in many national and international journals. Also started renal transplant program in MS Ramaya Medical College 1987. Helped to start the renal transplant program in many centers in India and abroad. Thank you, sir. And I would like to please introduce our today's speakers and over to you, sir.
Thank you, RPG Life Science and my friends. It's a great honor to introduce Shishir. Actually, Shishir needs no introduction in the field of nephrology and transplant. Shishir, I know, is one of our brilliant students from my alma mater, Christian Medical College, Vellore. After that, he joined my good friend Raja Purkar in Nadiad, and he is chairman of nephrology at the Mujlibai Urology Hospital in Nadiad, which is one of the premier institutes for nephrology and transplant. And many of his students are in Karnataka. We owe a lot to Mujlibai and Shishir for training many students for my own state. And what I can tell from my knowledge of knowing Shishir is, he is one of the great academicians. And whatever trial we want to do, we always approach Shishir, and he takes the leadership. And we can be rest assured, you can't get a better speaker now for this session, decoding the Athena trial, which is an important trial, than Shishir. Shishir has got many papers. He's chaired a lot of sessions in national and international conferences. He is the most sought after speaker in many meetings, and we are fortunate to have him. Thank you, Shishir, for being with us. And talking of the Athena trial, I'm sure I'm not going to steal his thunder, but nevertheless, I know that it's an important trial with regard to azothioprine. And let's go back to some history of azothioprine. Last week, we had our guru, Dr. Chako Jacob, talking on the role of azothioprine in transplant. It is one of the earliest immunosuppressive drugs in transplant. In fact, the first transplant done in Boston, they didn't have any immunosuppression because it was twins. Later on, Sir Roy Khan, he actually got 6 mercaptopurine, and then azothioprine came into being for transplantation. And I was very fortunate to have been trained in CMC Vellore in the PC era, that is before cyclosporin era. And that time we just had azothioprine and prednisolone. And we had to import azothioprine from Burroughs Wellcome, and it was being sold as Imuran. It was very expensive. And suddenly Burroughs Wellcome stopped sending Imuran to India. And that is the time RPG Science, earlier called Searle, started making our own Indian-made azothioprine sold as Azoran. I vividly remember in Bangalore in 1990s, early 1990s, when Azoran came in and they had a launch in one of the hotels in Bangalore. They even presented me a lamp in the shape of a kidney with Azoran put on that. And that is how Azoran came into India. And one of the earliest study was done by Sushila Bulchan, Sushila Vishwanathan in Vellore. She did her MD in Vellore, then went to PGH Chandigarh, did her nephrology training, then went to Jaslock Hospital, Bombay. And one of the earliest study of using azothioprine, especially the Azoran brand, compared to Imuran, was done by her in Jaslock Hospital. Just 14 cases she did, and that gave us the confidence to use azothioprine. And we have been using azothioprine even before cyclosporin. But as a brand, Azoran, it's commonly used now. And I don't think I can remember any other brand of azothioprine now. Then came mycophenolate, and I think a lot of vested interest, in my own feeling, has come into mycophenolate, and that has become the standard of care. But I personally feel that azathioprine still got a role, especially in a country like India. And my own personal choice is combination of tacrolimus with azathioprine. When you use cyclosporin in azathioprine, or even if you use earlier cyclosporin MMF, the dosage of MMF needed was very high. But with tacrolimus, azathioprine, we can get a low dose tac-aza, which is very common used now, especially for poor patients. It's a bone because the cost really comes down. And she comes from a very charitable institution in Nadia. I'm sure you'll have his own experience on this subject. And I was just going through the literature. One article which really impressed me was by Sapna Shah, where she did a study in the NHS group of paired kidneys. Doing disease transplants, you get two kidneys. So what she analyzed was one of the kidneys was with azathioprine, the other was with MMF. And I think about 250 cases she analyzed. And in the study was that there's no difference between the two groups. So that gave us more confidence of using azathioprine. And I think, as somebody says in medicine, the pendulum swings back. And I think slowly the pendulum is swinging towards azathioprine as one of the important immunosuppressive treatment in India. And I don't think I'll go much onto this because Shishir is people are waiting for Shishir to talk. Shishir, the stage is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Sundar, for the kind introduction. And also thanks him for sharing his experience, because Dr. Sundar and they were the very early transplanters, and they really set the stage for transplantation to become more widely popular in the country. And their experience is very important, and especially telling us about the little background about the Indian azathioprine also. And also I'd like to thank RPG for inviting me for this talk. So today's task given to me was decoding the Athena study. But before going to the study proper, I thought I'll briefly give you an overview of the historical evolution of immunosuppression and the criteria for choosing immunosuppression, and then finally go on to the Athena study. As you can all see that in the 60s, when the transplantation started, the acute rejection rate at the first year was very, very high. Almost 80 to 90% of patients would have had rejection in the first year. Then came radiation, prednisolone, and mercaptopurine. So at this point, only identical twins were transplanted. But after the introduction of 6-mercaptopurine, that is the precursor to the Imburan or azathioprine, the transplantation stage really set off. And then once ADGAM was introduced, this was the horse ADGAM. And then gradually the introduction of cyclosporin, which changed everything. The rejection rate steadily fell, and then came in initially the unmodified cyclosporin, also known as Sandimune. And then came the modified or microemulsion cyclosporin, known as the Neoral, which is the current product that we are all using now. This really reduced the rejection rates dramatically. And then after the introduction of tacrolimus, maybe MMF, thymoglobin, basiliximab, and now a lot of the other drugs which are coming, but the rejection rates in the first year have now actually plateaued around about anywhere between 5 to 15% of the patients get a rejection. The important thing to note is that though there has been a dramatic reduction in the rejection rates in the first year, what happens in the long term? As you can see this data in the cadaveric transplant and also living donor transplant, in the first year, there has been a dramatic reduction from the 90s to the 2000s in the loss of the graft. However, after the first year, about 5 to 7% of grafts every year are lost, and this has not been changed. Right from the 90s to 2009, whenever the transplants were done, there has been the steady rate, or the attrition rate has been between 5 to 6%. Similar to the story in the living donor, of course, the living donor, the early losses were much lower compared to that in the compared to the cadaveric transplant. However, after the first year, about 4% of the kidneys, 4 to 5% of the kidneys will be lost every year. So the real challenge for transplant is to have therapies which can improve the long-term outcome, and also to see whether the therapies that we're using are really improving the long-term outcomes or not. So the choice of immunosuppression depends upon the risk of rejection and the side effect profile of the drug, the availability, and also important is the cost, especially in a resource-limited country like us, and where the therapy has to be taken lifelong. Cost becomes an important criteria also. So as you can see, the choice of immunosuppression, if it's a low-risk transplant like a zero HLA mismatch, a live donor, Caucasian, low panel reactive antibodies, absence of donor-specific antibodies, blood group compatible, immediate graft function, cold ischemia time, which is very short, and the first transplant, these all transplants would not require a very intense immunosuppression. Compared at the other end of the spectrum, we have patients who have higher number of HLA mismatches, younger recipients or older donors, African-American ethnicity, high penal-reactive antibody, that is they have a preformed antibodies or donor-specific antibodies, blood group incompatible, patients who are having deceased donor transplants and likelihood of a delayed onset of graft function, long cold dyspnea time, and a retransplant. These are all having a very high risk of rejection, and therefore the immunosuppression which are needed for this group of patients is different from what you would need for the low risk category. And a lot of patients would fall in between these things. In our country, most transplants, the first transplant, live donor, most of them are not sensitized. There is an immediate graft function. Our surgeons do a really good job. And we do not actually practice steroid withdrawal in our country. And therefore, this makes most of our patients on the lower end of the spectrum compared to what you see in the West. Now, the drugs that we have is that we have an induction agent, the basiliximab, and we have the antithymocyte globulin, the thymoglobulin, and grapholon. And on the maintenance immunosuppression, we have calcineurin inhibitor, cyclosporin, tacrolimus, the anti-proliferative drug azathioprine, mycophenolate mofetil, mTOR inhibitor, sirolimus, everolimus, steroids, and belatacept. The other drugs like rituximab, I have not included here because they are used in specialized situations. The important thing is how do we really have the maintenance immunosuppression? So right now, enough data has emerged that tacrolimus remains to be the #1 maintenance therapy. And despite numerous studies, it has been difficult to dislodge tacrolimus, despite some of its limitations like causing new onset diabetes or having some nephrotoxicity. In the anti-proliferative space, usually there has been a lot of replacement with mycophenolate mofetil, but as we'll discuss today, the azathioprine, though has a very long experience, almost about 50 to 60 years of experience, still continues to have a role in the current scenario. And mTOR inhibitors are trying to find its place in the immunosuppression maintenance group. It's mostly used for rescue therapy, though there are papers emerging that can be used de novo also. Steroids, in our country, though we continue to use steroids in all our protocols, but there are a lot of movements to try to reduce or to eliminate steroids. And if it has to be done, it has to be done in the very beginning of the transplants. And we will see in the particular study how they remove the steroids and with all its side effects. Of course, belatacept is currently not available in the country, but it remains another maintenance immunosuppression. So the challenge is to what combinations to use, combinations of induction agent and combination of maintenance therapies so as to have a real long-term good outcome of the transplant. Now, what has been the trend in the US? In the US, if you see the induction agent, the antithymocyte globulin, that is the T-cell depleting agents, are almost about 60 to 70% patients are using that, whereas the use of the Simulect or the IL-2 receptor blockers has been reducing, and very few patients are being transplanted without any induction agent, less than about 20% of the patients. Whereas in the calcineurin inhibitors, there has been tacrolimus has literally replaced cyclosporin as the drug of choice in the initial phase. And in the antimetabolite also, if you see the MMF has really replaced azathioprine, but we'll see today some of the data where its place is. And mTOR inhibitors, they have been there for about 2 decades, but they haven't been really able to find their real place as an immunosuppression in the early transplant period. And steroids, though we all want to do away with steroids, and also in the West, they want to do away with the steroids. Since last 15 years, only about 30% of the patients can go under a transplant without steroids, and the remaining have to be on the steroids at the time of transplant and also in the subsequent year post-transplant. So again, the discussion today is that what about azathioprine versus mycophenolate mofetil? Now, let's go to the studies as Dr. Sundar alluded to that when MMF came in, it had to have a trial. And one of the initial trials had to be done by the industry. So that was the MMF US study. This is, I'm sure you'll be able to see it if you study it very closely. The US study, this was 1995, and there was a tricontinental trial, that is the Europe, the US, and the Australia. And these are the 2 trials, both supported by the industry, which showed that there was an improvement in the acute rejection rates compared to that of the azathioprine. However, and this therapy used actually cyclosporine, that is Sandimmune, and some of the patients, and Neurol in some of the other patients. And they did show there was some improvement in the acute rejection rates compared to azathioprine. However, subsequently, when cyclosporine was replaced by tacrolimus, Johnson did this study with comparing MMF and azathioprine, and did not really show a very marginal improvement, 0.79 with a wide confidence interval. And there were other studies also in the cyclosporine era done by the Italian group, and that is the MYSS study. And now this study, there was not an industry sponsored, it was an academic study. And they did show there was no real essential difference between whether you use MMF or azathioprine as a maintenance immunosuppression. And this is actually the Cochrane review. And if you see the Cochrane review, about a large weight, 40% of the weightage is because of the studies done at the time of the trials for introduction of MMF, and these were industry-sponsored trials. And therefore, there is a small tilt towards that MMF is better. Now, this is for the initial acute rejection rates comparing the two. But if you see the graft loss or the censored the graft loss, again, it comes very close to that. The hazard ratio is almost 0.88, and there's a wide confidence intervals. And the Johnson studies using tacrolimus, not cyclosporine, showed actually that maybe azathioprine is equally good, or maybe slightly marginally better. And similar is the case with the study by the Italian group, which showed that for the risk of graft loss is really not much different whether you use azathioprine or whether you use the MMF. So it is not very clear whether the early surrogate outcomes such as acute rejection and EGF are adequate predictors of ultimate graft outcomes. So it becomes important that because all of the initial studies of drugs used acute rejection rates as to show that they are powerful immunosuppressants and would do good for the patient. But many of the acute rejections are very mild and they're easy to treat, and they may not have a much impact on the long-term outcome. Now, just before I go to the Athena study, I just thought I'll briefly review one of the studies, again, a very long-term study, which compared mycophenolate with azathioprine. Now, this comes from the cohort, Australian cohort of the patients enrolled in the tricontinental mycophenolate mofetil renal transplant study. Now, it is important to note that this study was studied for the by the time of introduction of the MMF. The industry sponsored the first few years of the study, but subsequently the study was stopped. But Australia has a very good registry, and they could go back and see all the patients who were included in the tricontinental trial in the Australian arm of the tricontinental trial, and what happened to them. And if you can see here, this was a 15-year study, so it's a very long-term outcome. And if you see the hazard ratio for patient death, if you take one for the azathioprine, and there is a p-value is nearly the same, slightly lower for MMF. And there was three arms actually, azathioprine, 2 grams of MMF and 3 grams of MMF, along with steroids and cyclosporine. If you see the graft loss, in the first year are a little higher with azathioprine compared to MMF, and also 3 grams. But in the subsequent years, after the first year, the graft loss are in fact maybe a little higher for the 2 gram MMF compared to 3 gram MMF. And a similar death-censored graft loss, little lower in the first year with MMF, but in subsequent years, in fact, higher for MMF 2 gram and little lower for 3 gram MMF. So this is very important that for the immunosuppression, really want long-term studies. So the authors concluded that this long-term examination, although limited by small numbers, found little evidence for the superiority of MMF over azathioprine. And if you can see here, again, the same study showed that if you are on the azathioprine arm, you remained on the azathioprine for beyond 3 years, a small number of patients actually switched to MMF. Whereas in the 2 gram MMF study, they showed that after the first year, 3, 4, 5, so many number of patients actually switched to azathioprine. So 35% of the MMF patient eventually switched to azathioprine. And this was essentially because of the diarrhea, which is significant with MMF, and some patients had weight loss, and therefore they had to be switched to azathioprine. Now, coming to this today's study, which they've asked me to review. Now, this study, mycophenolate mofetil versus azathioprine in kidney transplant on steroid-free low-dose cyclosporine immunosuppression. Now, this trial again comes from the Rugenati's group, that is the Italian group. So this was a randomized prospective multi-center trial to compare the effect of chronic allograft nephropathy prevention of mycophenolate mofetil versus azathioprine as a sole immunosuppressive therapy for kidney transplant recipients. So this was a phase 3 parallel clinical trial, and it was an academic trial. This was not an industry-sponsored trial. The primary aim was comparing the cumulative incidence of chronic allograft nephropathy in recipients of first kidney transplant from a deceased donor. So this was a deceased donor study. It was done in 6 sites in Italy. The duration of the study was 4 years of follow-up. Participants included between 2007 and 2012, followed up to August 2016. Now, they had a bit of a complicated protocol, which I think I'll just go through slowly with you. The induction therapy, they used rabbit ATG, 0.5 milligram per kg for the day of transplant up to 6 days. So they used about 3 milligram per kg of rabbit ATG induction. They also used basiliximab as an induction. This is a very unique trial where they used both rabbit ATG as well as basiliximab. They used 20 milligram at time of surgery for a day of surgery and 4 days, and day 4 after transplantation, which is a standard dosing for basiliximab. They used a pulse of methylprednisolone of 500 milligram was infused on the day of transplant, and subsequently 2 additional pulses given 250 milligram and 125 milligram on day 1 and day 2. And thereafter the patients were steroid free. So this was really a trial to see if you use a significant induction therapy, you could do away with steroids. So this was a steroid free trial. And for the maintenance, they use cyclosporine, that is Neoral. Daily doses were tried to achieve a CSA trough levels in 300 and 400 nanogram per ml for the first week. And they reduced the dose subsequently to 200, 250 for up to 2 months, then 150, 200 for 3 to 4 months. And then subsequently, after 4 months, about 100 to 150 nanogram per ml thereafter. So this is really low dose. And if you translate into the milligram per kg, roughly it comes about 2 milligram per kg in 2 divided doses. So this was steroid free on cyclosporine. What about the MMF? They then randomly assigned this group to receive 1:1, 750 milligram of MMF twice a day, or azathioprine 70 milligram once a day, if the patient's body weight was less than 75 kg, or 125 milligram, the body weight was more than 75 kg. So roughly about a milligram and milligram and a half per kg body weight was the dose of azathioprine. This was azathioprine was used once a day, whereas MMF was used twice a day. And what was the real thing of the strength of the study was between 12 months to 18 months after a transplant, a surveillance biopsy was obtained from consenting patients without previous clinical acute rejection or any risk of excess bleeding or any other contraindication to evaluate the presence of histological changes consistent with subclinical rejection, disease recurrence, or de novo glomerulonephritis. And after completion of 3 years of follow-up after randomization, a second surveillance biopsy was planned in order to evaluate the cumulative incidence of, again, biopsy-proven chronic allograft nephropathy in consenting patients without already established histological diagnosis of CAM. So the investigators, there was a lot of leeway given to the clinicians as to do the biopsy. If they already thought that the first year showed a significant CAM, then they would have obviated a second biopsy at 3 years. So as you can see, there are 233 patients, which were 50% were assigned to azathioprine and another about 119 to mycophenolate. Most of the patients completed 1 year, then some died as they progressed and completed 2 years and 3 years. So a sizable number of patients actually completed 3 years of the study. Their loss because of the death and because of withdrawal are very minimal, and all patients were very well followed up. As you can see, this is very mild. You may not be able to see it very well, but essentially to show that these two arms, azathioprine and MMF, were equally balanced with respect to the age, the genders, the glomerular, the native kidney disease, the donor types. Just to show you a bit, there were about dual kidney transplants, because it's a cadaveric transplant. So if they take elderly donors, dual kidney transplants were done in about 8% and 9% of the patients, both in azathioprine and in the MMF arm. Histology scoring the base, it did show that they had a baseline biopsy done, and this baseline biopsy did not show any difference between the azathioprine and the cyclosporine and in the MMF arm. And they had a surveillance biopsy done at 1 year. Again, I had put up some data over here, which to show that they had scored, they had taken the scoring as per the chronic allograft index. And this chronic allograft index included both the glomerular scoring, the interstitial scoring, and the tubular scoring, and the vascular changes. And they had at that time used the 1997, the Banff classification to also score this. All the scores were done by the local thing, and then they were reviewed by the central committee for the final scoring. And it was shown that the chronic allograft nephropathy, if you can see in this slide, there is not really much difference between the azathioprine and MMF arm in all the study participants. And this included both the single transplant and the dual transplants. Whereas if you see in the single kidney transplant, again, there was no significant difference. There were 28 events in the azathioprine and MMF arm, both at 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year. So essentially, if you see the chronic changes, which would you have expected that with a better immunosuppression, it would have been different. But essentially, azathioprine and MMF didn't really make a big difference over 3 years of period when you did a biopsy to see for chronic allograft nephropathy. Essentially, I think here these changes would have been the changes which you would see with chronic antibody-mediated rejection. And what about the acute rejection rates? As expected, the acute rejection rates were higher with azathioprine compared to that with MMF. And but if you see the subclinical rejection rates were nearly similar. When you combine the clinical and subclinical, there was no difference between MMF and azathioprine. So though azathioprine had a more clinical rejections, but MMF did have some degree of subclinical rejections. However, in the end analysis, slightly more in the azathioprine compared to the MMF group. What about the GFR? The estimated GFR over the 3 years of period, there was no real difference between the GFR. As you can see here, the C0 levels were similar in both the groups. So there was no real difference. And as you can see here, after a couple of years of the transplant, 2 years, they were maintaining about 100 nanogram levels. The platelet count initial dip because of the ATG probably, but then subsequently they were both maintained, both azathioprine and MMF were the same. And WCBC count also nearly the same all through. Initial increase because of the steroids, and then low because of the thymoglobulin, and then subsequently maintaining the same thing later on also. So what are the safety events? So there were 228 patients. So all of them had some events, as is expected in transplantation, that you will have some adverse events, but they were not really different between MMF and azathioprine group. There was no difference in the NOTAT between the two groups. And the serious adverse events, that one which would require more attention like admissions, again, no essential difference between MMF and azathioprine group. Overall, 73 patients, that is 31% withdrew the study drug because of the AEs, and 22 patients in the MMF group, that is about 18% withdrew from this group. About 22 in the MMF and 51 in the azathioprine group. So there were more azathioprine patients who actually withdrew from the study. And possibly because the investigators wrote in the discussion that this may be because of there was a lot of pressure that if they're not doing well, you change. And usually people would change from azathioprine MMF in the current scenario. The total number of infections was not significantly different in the two study groups, with no significant difference in the incidence of cytomegalovirus reactivation, which in MMF you would expect it to be treated more, but at least in this study, did not find much difference between MMF and azathioprine. Despite similar trends in platelet WBC count with the two groups, there were more episodes of non-serious thrombocytopenia or leukopenia reported with azathioprine than with MMF. So yes, you do get some degree of bone marrow suppression, more with azathioprine compared to MMF. Here it is important to note that these patients were on a steroid-free trial. And generally in a steroid-free trial, you tend to get a lower counts compared to that you see in the patients on steroids. So this is one side, an important point to note, that in steroid-free trials, usually patients or the investigators will reduce the drug or take off the drug when the WBC count is below 3,000 or 2,500, rather than what you would do it in a standard steroid transplant. So what are the limitations of the study? There are small sample size and lack of blinding, but however, the investigators, those who were reviewing the things were blinded, but the investigators are not completely blinded. The lack of standardization of measurement of donor-specific antibodies, because DSA was not measured, it would have been interesting to note whether the new de novo DSA was any different between azathioprine and MMF, because this would really tell us whether the patients who have a low de novo DSA or no with MMF or not. A major risk factor graphs have another limitations of the study, especially considering relatively short follow-up. So in conclusion, in this study, the investigators found that in deceased donor kidney transplant recipients on low dose CSA and no steroids, MMF had no significant benefit over azathioprine. And this finding suggests that MMF, due to its lower cost, could safely replace MMF in combination with minimized immunosuppression. Now, there's some of the discussion which I thought that I will raise those points and maybe get inputs from all of you regarding what your thoughts are. Acute rejection rates are lower with MMF, but the difference is less in the tacrolimus era, especially in the low-risk patients. And most of these rejections are easily treated and may not impact the long-term outcome. Azathioprine can be continued during pregnancy is a very important point, as less GI side effects and maybe less tissue-invasive CMV, but though all studies do not concur with it. It is cheaper than MMF. However, important to note that azathioprine needs to be stopped if xanthine oxidase inhibitors are to be used, like allopurinol or febuxostat. So if you have a patient with hyperuricemia and you decide to treat it, then azathioprine is not a good drug because it increases the level of the azathioprine, and so you cannot use that with that. Another important thing, so azathioprine offers equally good results at a lesser cost than MMF and is still a useful immunosuppression kidney transplantation. Though you may have a little lower acute rejection rates with MMF, but in the end game, as you can see that if you, transplantation is a marathon, And in the marathon, it is important. It is not who runs the first leg fast, but one who really reaches the end point a couple of years down the line. And both seem to be doing equally good, at least in the data shown by the previous Tricontinental study and the recent Athena trial, and also the MYSS trial. I would end here and would be happy to answer questions and from your suggestions or any points that you want to raise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shishir, for succinctly and clearly explaining the Athena trial. To explain any clinical trial requires a lot of knowledge. You've done a lot of homework, and even an old man like me could understand what you explained. Now, we have been using azathioprine, as you rightly said, in pregnancy. I think that is an important point, because we can't use mycophenolate during pregnancy, and azathioprine is a drug of choice. And quite a few of our patients have gone from MMF to azathioprine just to get pregnant, and they've done well. Now, one of the questions now asked is in the question box is by Abhijit Konor. He says, do you think the outcomes would differ if tacrolimus was used as a primary immunosuppression according to the Johnson trial? Tacrolimus negates the superiority of MMF over azathioprine. I agree with that. Why do you think the principal investigator chose cyclosporin over TAC? I have the same question. Why did they use cyclosporin?
If you see these, this is an Italian trial, and the Italian investigators, for some reason, have been still, even in 2007, when the tacrolimus was available, they still continue with cyclosporin. Even in their MYSS study, they did continue with cyclosporin. I do not have complete knowledge, and they have not really put it on the discussion. But I believe that that's what they feel, that cyclosporin may be as good as tacrolimus. And there is a group or segment of people who still believe that that may be equally good. That's why
I also, I'm still an old timer, and I took a long time to use tacrolimus. Even after tacrolimus came into India, I know you had the generic tacrolimus coming in before the original brand. For a long time, at least a couple of years, I was late in using tacrolimus. And I must say that my good friend from Coimbatore, Dr. Vivek Pathak, he's a sort of evangelist for tacrolimus. He was using Prograf, and he sort of brainwashed me, saying that it's a good drug. It's a good drug, there's no doubt about it. But with the use of tacrolimus, I'm finding more diabetes. And I have never seen BK virus in my life till I started using tacrolimus. In fact, very interestingly, the first case where I used tacrolimus, it was a BK virus nephropathy, and I lost the graft. Despite that, I'm still using, but I think that's an important point. Cyclosporin is still a good drug, but I think cosmetically for ladies, it's not good. Definitely, it causes a lot of issues. Hirsutism and gingival hypertrophy, those issues are there. And my own protocol now, I am using quite a bit of single dose tacrolimus, like Advograph, now Zydus, Adventa. So I use a combination of Advograph, azathioprine, prednisolone, everything in the morning. I call it the ARP regime, and many of my software engineers who are transplant, they find it easy because Bangalore traffic, they're not able to come back home for the evening dose. They take everything in the morning together, and then they go for work. And I find the compliance better with the single dose TAC, azathioprine, and prednisolone. So I've been that way. I would say I'm happy with azathioprine. I'm sure we can take more questions. There are some more questions now. Umapati Hegde, your colleague from Nadia has asked whether tacrolimus, azathioprine with ATG induction, whether would equal. I don't know what, here, sir, whether tacrolimus, aza with ATG induction, are they equal?
We don't have, as I said, that we don't have very good studies where to tell us that. But I believe that if you're using ATG, then there has to be sufficient reason to use ATG. Either you want a steroid-free transplant, or the patient is at a high risk because of preformed DSA. There has to be some, or the actually mismatch is completely, there is no mismatch, there is no match, or a complete mismatch is there. And all those reasons have to be there to use ATG along with TAC and MMF, or TAC and EZA and prednisolone. So if you're not trying to get one of the benefits like steroid-free or really high-risk transplants, then ATG may be a bit of an overkill in some of the situations, unless you want to go on a very, very low dose of other things in the initial part. But I think I agree that with ATG and that low dose ATG, maybe one could really go down in other immunosuppressions.
Right, and here in this study, they have used the combination of ATG, low dose, and basilizumab.
That's right. But they went on a steroid-free protocol later on. So they did a steroid-free. They only gave 3 doses of steroid and then steroid-free. So if you want to use a significant induction agent, then you must have some reason like going steroid-free or something, because otherwise the risk of CMV infections and others would be significant. And as Dr. Sundar alluded to, BK would be another problem if we use a quite stiff immunosuppression.
There are some questions from my colleagues from Bangalore. One is from Dr. G.K. Prakash. He's asked, any significant cosmetic effects with cyclosporin? I don't know, in the study, I don't think they would have mentioned that. But
you don't mention, but as we are all aware, there is a significant hirsutism, gum hypertrophy. And I think especially for women who go into transplant, this will be very, very important. And we can really, I mean, I'm sure Dr. Sundar will agree that there is a real difference between the cosmetic effects of cyclosporin versus now. You don't really recognize them as transplant patients. Earlier we could recognize sitting in the general OPD who are transplant who are not. I think it's a big change now.
Dr. Vishwanath, my colleague, HOD from my hospital, is asking, second transplant, if there is recurrent infection, would you be comfortable using azathioprine? I think I personally feel azathioprine causes less urinary tract infection compared to MMF, but Vishwanath has asked this question. Shishir, what's your?
I think we could still use it, but, or I would sometimes say that there's you can change, if you have any problems, it is easier to change also. So nowadays, though, because of the general trends also, because we practice in an environment where we can't really do something very different from what is existing. So I do start with tacrolimus MMF, but at a very early stage, if I feel that it's not doing well, diarrhea or any other, diarrhea is a very important cause to switch patients from MMF to azathioprine. So I think the important message is that we have got 2 drugs. They have merits and demerits, and we can really still not discard one of the azathioprine, which still continues to have some merit or significant merit.
I think that's a very sane advice you are giving, Shishir, that they are not like competitive to each other. They're complementary. You can use it as and when, because we have, as you rightly said, people on azathioprine where there's been bone marrow depression or they got gout, we have stopped aza and put them on MMF. And as you rightly said, 30% at least of the people on MMF we have changed because of diarrhea. Diarrhea may be due to eating pani puri on the road, but nevertheless, we have in India, you know, it's a common thing. We have changed and we have found good response, especially people with ulcerative colitis. And those are the people I have put them on azathioprine and they have done well. Now, there is an anonymous question. If acute rejection episode is higher in azathioprine group, and later if steroid is added to treat that, won't that influence long-term outcome data compared to steroid-free MMF group with low rejection?
Yeah, I do agree that, but when they do this intention to treat analysis, generally they do it as to what you started with. And then they try to analyze the cumulative steroid use. In this particular, they haven't really mentioned how many patients they reintroduce steroid. But you are right that you might have to reintroduce steroid if the patient suffers acute rejection, and a slightly more number would have come to that. But then, yes, these are the difficulties of nobody wants to stick to one protocol if patients are not doing well. But those acute rejections, the question really is that a little acute rejection in the early phase, especially cell-mediated, happening within the first 15 days, where you can use a touch of steroid and get away. Is that really influence the long-term outcome? May or may not be not, because there are papers both for and against. And maybe it's the subclinical rejection which is actually more notorious, because that's where you may miss them to treat them, and they may continue to harm the graft. And they may introduce maybe some degree of donor-specific antibodies. So I think overall, a little rejection or a very mild 1A rejection doesn't really impact the graft in the long term.
I think Umapati has made a comment that he says low dose ATG will reduce early rejections. We agree with that. And we have a question from a nephrology colleague from Bangladesh, Dr. Abdul Salam, who also is a renal transplant recipient of mine. He says, is MMF will be substituted by old Azoran? That's, he's asking whether Azoran will take over MMF. I personally feel, I think, as you right, as Shishir said, both will go hand in hand. Right now, I think only about 10-20% of people are on Azoran in the present protocol. Maybe that may go up a little bit. What's your take?
Yeah, I do agree that right now, you know, the winds are favoring the use, at least in starting the patients with tacrolimus MMF, because we have several trials to that. and also the current scenario in the world. But as I said that depending upon the circumstances and the scenario, if there's a low risk transplant, cost is an important issue, and CMV infection is another issue, or as we feel that if you feel that BK virus monitoring cannot be done, then maybe they'll do equally well with azathioprine. If it is a good match transplant, especially if they're two DR matched, then DR mismatches are not there, then the requirement of the expensive medication may not be there. Because a lot of patients come and ask us, doctor, I'm really finding it difficult to continue because of cost. If I switch, what will happen? What is the real risk? And nobody wants to rock a steady going boat, but then it is important. And we have information that azathioprine is very close and the risk of rejection is much lower, especially a year out of the transplant. So there are papers to show when you switch from MMF to azathioprine, as you said, that we also switched a lot of patients who were contemplating pregnancies, and none of them had any problem. So one could switch that also.
I think your point is valid that in a country like India, where resources, funds, and we don't have so much of government support, in private practice we tend to use, especially with the advent of tacrolimus. I think tacrolimus is a very potent immunosuppressant in my opinion. Even though I have been using cyclosporin, I think it's a far superior drug from the immunosuppressive point of view compared to cyclosporin. So I would be happy to use TAC as a combination without much worry. The question now is, what is the dose of azathioprine you use? I normally use only 50, 75 when I use tacrolimus. And before the advent of cyclosporin, we are using 2 mg per kg of azathioprine. But then when azathioprine became an adjuvant drug, I would not exceed 75 milligram in most of my patients. What is your protocol?
Yeah, I do agree that just for some of the people who have not really known about the original Dr. Mary's protocol for azathioprine and prednisolone alone. They at the time, they found that a dose of 2.8 milligram per kg body weight, if you do not use CNI, that is in the pre-CNI era, and that was a dose. And once cyclosporin came in, the dose was somewhere between 1 to 1.5 milligram per kg body weight. And I agree with Dr. Sundar that with tacrolimus, I think a milligram per kg body dose is a good dose because somewhere between 50 and 75. And if the tacrolimus levels are good and you have steroid on board, I think that should be a good dose. And your risk of getting leukopenia or a hemoglobin drop is much lower when you use this dose.
And there is a question from Dr. G.K. Prakash. What is our experience from India with the above regimen? Dr. Pathak would have large experience. Cyclosporin, how about the rest? I don't know. What's the answer for that? We must ask Dr. Pathak only. But I think my own take, Shishir, after listening to you is, I think we should have Indian data, which we don't have. I think you should lead a study or do a trial. Giving Indian data of comparing azathioprine MMF and using TAC MMF, because most of them, as you rightly said, are cyclosporin, but TAC MMF, nobody has done head-to-head study. I think you should lead the trial and do that study.
I mean, I'm sure what is the problem, the challenge of doing a trial with these is that the induction, because we tend to use it, if you do not use induction, and we're using only TAC and azathioprine, there's a slightly, which we did actually, we published, or we actually presented, we didn't really publish that. It was a short trial that slightly higher rejection rates. And difficult to really randomize patients because patients come with so much of knowledge unless it is supported. So I think if RPG funds us, then I'm sure we can run a trial because without funding, randomizing becomes very difficult. Patients don't really agree, and the colleagues in the department also are, let's be honest, would not want things like that. But I'm sure if it's support, Dr. Mangesh can tell us if they can support.
What do you say, Mangesh? Do you think you can support us?
Yeah, definitely. We are planning. We are in the planning. We are budgeting, and you will see the outcomes definitely.
Sure, because I think it's very interesting to really see because the cost differential in the long term would be quite significant, and other side effects also.
Yes, yes. Already, Dr. Kher sir, when we shared this invitation with him, the idea about, so he shared that the study should be conducted. If Italian people can do, why not Indian study, as even Sundar sir said, that comparing MMF TAC and ASATAC and doing randomization and sponsoring the study. So RPG is very seriously looking for that, and we have taken this project as a project for this year. So soon you would see the multi-center protocol and the details. We would be starting the feasibility very soon.
So that maybe
my HOD, Dr. Vishwanath, has messaged that he is ready to take part from Manipal for part of the study. So I have the consent from my HOD for doing the study.
Yes. We have also shortlisted the, as you rightly said, and being a advisory board panel members, we are not going to, go away from it. You would be the guiding, lighthouses for the study which is going to come. So definitely I would assure that on behalf of RPG and Sanjeev sir and team nephrology, right? Basically,
Actually, on behalf of RPG, I think what Mangesh was telling, we had a lot of debate on that with Dr. Kher, and we are probably shortly coming with a panel discussion, probably in August 2nd week from PGI, SGPGI, MPYH, CMC Veller, all these panelists. In fact, Dr. Vishwanath has told, including Corporate Hospital Manipal. We had a little bit started discussion with Gangaram. So we are planning around 10 to 11 corporate hospitals.
Actually, Sashi will be happy that his colleague and HOD Humapati Hegde has also given consent for the study.
Yeah. So they were all pretty excited when this study came in 26 June that why can't we do in India? I think we have started the background work. And of course, within a week's time, you'll see the response and we all will involve you in personally meet you. Dr. Mangesh just post-lockdown is planning to travel all the location, see the feasibility part. Probably within 2-3 weeks, we'll come up with a plan. Sure, we are on it. I can assure you on that.
I think the title which is today we have, that impact on Indian practice. So this is the real impact, that it has paved the way for such type of studies. So I can see the real impact in Indian practice.
But actually, what I think is when we are doing the study, we can also do some sort of retrospective analysis. People already on azathioprine, many of them, so that we have the record. I'm sure I have quite a few patients who have spent 20-30 years of transplant and on azathioprine. Maybe we should get that data also. And how many have become pregnant? So we have additional information apart from the study. This data will be helpful for our day-to-day practice. What do you say, Shishir?
Yeah, certainly. I think I agree fully that because we have certain unique infections in our country also. So a lot of people, and to be very honest, when we travel, I mean, Dr. Sundar agreed to, now a lot of the other African countries, other Asian countries are doing transplants. And they're looking up to us and asking questions that if I'm doing this, is it right or wrong? And we have to tell based on what we know, but we don't have our own real good data. I think that's going to help us. And as transplantation increases in many other countries and our own country, I think generating data from our country is important. I'm sure the suggestions that you made are
right. And as rightly said, because in this trial also, while discussing, they were discussing about industry-sponsored studies like Tricontinental and the subsequent 2 studies in 1996 and 95, and that has influenced. So we'll take care during this study, which we are going to propose, to make the biases and confounding factor minimized and make it a real Indian study. So that is committed.
And, since your company is also making mycophenolate, nobody can accuse you of being biased because you're making. Suppose you're making only azathioprine, they can say you're trying to promote azathioprine, but you're the full range. So you will be ethically correct in having this trial, I suppose.
Yes. Correct, sir. Correct.
One thing which is very unique about this study is that it is talking about the, again, prospective nature, academic study, and using cyclosporine microemulsion, and they have also discussed about the oil-based and the difference between microemulsion during discussion and impact of its outcome on the past studies which were done on cyclosporine in protocol. So basically, this study is a bit it is definitely going to impact Indian practice and going to pave the many other studies, as as we can see.
I think we should have a protocol like induction and what dose to use, all this. I think we have a Shishir and his team, I'm sure, can come up with some protocol, and it should not be a difficult thing to get at least 10, 12 centers. And even if you get 20 cases, 10 centers for a year, you'll have about 200 cases to analyze.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely, sir. We are already spoken to few CROs who have experience of conducting such studies in nephrology. We are on that, means almost we have finished initial work, and now very soon we'll come up with the protocol, and protocol will be presented to you first, and then yeah.
Thank you. I think we are more or less coming to the end of the show, and I must thank RPG, and I must especially thank Shishir for explaining to us the Athena trial. And we look forward to him and all other colleagues to do this study, which will be a unique Indian study, I'm sure, and it will be useful for the whole world. Thank you very much, Shishir. Thank you, all the participants. We have participants from Bangladesh and other countries also. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this important session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, Shishir sir and Sundar sir, for making this successful event and helping us to understand Athena and the participants to understand Athena. And definitely many ideas are coming out of this, and this study is going to impact and help Indian investigators to get excited for similar trials in Indian population, and also retrospective studies. It will also help us. So thank you so much, and thank you all participants for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you.